Yeah, we're about to go. We are live. Okay, great. Okay, got my signal. We are live. Okay, let's see here. America. Hey, folks, welcome to Knowledge is Power. We are on your Facebook and your YouTube live every Sunday and Tuesday evening. Today, we've got three special guests. We're trying to get the other one on, so I'm going to get started with the podcast. And I always want to start with our topics, and one of our topics that we're going to be talking about and discussing is America, what we're going to go and what we're going to do going forward. And I always remember the song. I always remember the song we sang. It's always America, America. God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. So what are we doing with that grace? What is that state we're in? To talk about that state of our union, my guest tonight is Dr. AIRON Reynolds, of the pastor of the BORDEN Chapel Baptist Church here in Beaumont, and my pastor, Dr. DELBERT Allen MACK Sr., Cathedral of Faith Baptist Church, and from Houston, Texas. Well, originally he's from homegrown. Aren't you homegrown? Dr. Terrence Grant Malone, the pastor of the historical ST.JOHNS Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. Now, that's right. You are originally, you're homegrown here in Beaumont, Texas.
Orchard, Texas.
Orchard. The funny thing about it, I raised half of my life in a pear orchard growing up. I have never seen a pear orchard.
right.
Not a pear tree. But anyway, welcome, pastors. You are aware that 90% of the civil rights strives and progress we've made as people has been led by preachers and the church. I'm going to ask each of these pastors to open with their opinion of our state as a nation. Pastor Matt, can you lead that?
Well, I believe as a nation, particularly as it relates to racial relationships, we've digressed here in the last few years, most particular. And I think at this point, we're really at a sad point in history. I believe the national leadership has certainly led us in the wrong direction and encouraged an attitude of racism to be more open and obvious than it has ever been before. And I'm certainly in my lifetime, and I'm 61 years old. And I believe that the church has not really been as we should have been. And I think we should have been leading this effort. And when I speak of the church, I'm speaking ecumenically now, black and white and all others. We should have shown everybody else how we could work together to move forward in this area. I think we have not done as much as we could have. And I think the white church has more responsibility in that area than the black church does. And so I think people have moved around us and they are trying to do it without the level of involvement that the church has had historically.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Malone, can you add on to that?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Dr. Mack. Purely the moral fiber of this country has decayed. And I think that with everything, it begins with leadership. And I think that at 1600 Pennsylvania, we are void of leadership. And it's a trickle-down effect, which has caused there to be so many pockets in this nation that were asleep, and now they are awake. Unfortunately, they have been awakened by the bell toned of hatred, awakened by inequality. They have been awakened as the president has blown his trumpet to the lack of morals and values, and just being willing to say and do any and everything without there being any repercussion, which has unfortunately given to so many this supremacy thought, this thought that they are in control without consequence for their behavior and actions, because it's gone on so long. And I think that the blessing that we now have is that social media and cell phones are so prevalent that the things that have been going on for eons of years has now become readily available to us at the touch of a button because individuals are willing to film it or willing to let it be known. But it begins at the top, and unfortunately, uh, we have a cake with no topper. We have nothing at the top.
You're absolutely right. You there? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe, unfortunately, to add to that, I believe, unfortunately, with the leadership that we have for the country, the support that leadership gets is what enables it to do that. That's what disappoints me more than anything else. I've always known that we have individuals who have ungodly ideas and who will do ungodly things, but normally the rest of society would curtail things that they are able to do. But now they are gaining support from pockets that ought to be vehemently fighting against them. And so that's one of the saddest things to me in America, that one of the groups who ought to be standing up for justice and equality is supporting the person who's fighting against it. And I think that's horrible.
It is. It really is, because it's so divisive, and it has caused the country to be divided.
Right.
And his rhetoric is that he's divide, but that won't unite. And we need a leader that's going to unite us, and we don't have that right now.
Right, and he sends call words out subliminally
right.
To the average person. There are call words that he says, and his followers, and I call them followers, not supporters. His followers know what he's saying.
Right.
They understand what he's saying, and the rhetoric he picks up, and they respond to his rhetoric. I watched just today a white lady, unfortunately, with black paint, painting over the Black Lives Matter sign that was painted down. So it's crazy.
It is. It is. Well, we've got our pastor, Dr. AIRON Reynolds, has joined us. Hello, Pastor.
Good evening. How each of you are doing today?
Hey, good evening, Dr. Reynolds.
Pastor Rather, see you.
Good evening, Doc.
Where you buy that computer from? Dollar General?
I actually got it at Best Buy. On sale.
On sale. with y'all stimulus check, huh?
So,
Hey, Doctor, I don't know.
I'm bringing it back tomorrow.
We finally got you on now. Let me go over this question, and I want your opinion. And Dr. Mack and Dr. Malone has also answered it on their opinion. But I'm going to ask you if you missed that question, and that is that are you aware that 90% of the civil rights strides and progress that we've made as people has been led by preachers and the church? And we want to know your opinion on our state as a nation.
Well, allow me to start by saying I'm one of the ones that marched during the civil rights movement in the 60s with the late Reverend Dr. Ransom Howard at the First 6th Street Baptist Church. I'm one of the ones that protested the murder of the young man named Rabbit Coleman at the Palatka Police Department. I'm one of the ones that they had German Shepherd dogs to attack. They shot fire hoses, water with the fire hoses on us. I'm one of the ones that sat inside Crest and Walgreens because you could buy the hamburger, but you had to stand at the end of the counter and they give it to you and you eat it outside. I'm one of the ones that you are not allowed if you're shopping in JCPenney or Sears or Woolco or Woolworth or one of those major department stores in that day. They take your money, but you couldn't use their bathroom. We had to go to the alley. And when I look at where America is headed right now, we're going back to the same thing.
Yes. See, what happened is that, you know, when we marched back in the 60s, and I remember the time that Ramson Howard had you all was marching behind the rabbit back in the day in the 60s, early 60s. And that's when we were really stronghold and we was ready to go. We didn't care because we didn't have nothing to lose. But what happened, they gave us a little bit and they rocked us to sleep. We thought, you know, we were okay, but today is a little different. And we're not going to get rocked back to sleep again. We want to be able to stand and get exactly equality that we want, and we're not going to stop until we do that. But we have to have the right leadership. And I was saying earlier, everything started in a church. You know, when we got organized in the church. Remember that, Dr. Aaron?
I sure do.
Yeah, we had leaders that wanted to, and like Pastor Max said, we just don't have it right now. And I always remember this: it starts from the top too now. But we've got to be strong in what we're doing as a community and as in the Black African American communities. So let me ask you this: we've have had civil rights protests for many things since Dr. King's death. But most of us who are churchgoers are accustomed to be led by the righteous. Where are the righteous leaders today? I mean, where's the real preachers? Pastor, you want to lead us on that one also?
Well, I think that the real preachers are still present. I think every generation wrestles with how to address the issues in the present era that we live in. Isn't it amazing when you think about that? As far back as you can go, you needed civil rights leaders, you needed people fighting the same things. I think what also needs to happen is people who are not a part of the civil rights movement needs to be challenged. I think, as Dr. Malone stated earlier, now with the cell phones and the videos validating a lot of claims that have been made in previous generations, it's more difficult for people to ignore it. And I think now you are seeing more white people get involved in the various movements because they see it. Many of them never could have imagined it. As they are listening to prominent African Americans speak about the fact that they still talk to their sons about how to respond and react if you ever come in contact with a policeman, for them to talk about some of the injustices that they are still experiencing, even though they have a degree from Harvard University, or maybe or judges and attorneys and doctors, that they still receive the same kind of mistreatment. So now I think the contemporary pastor has to evaluate how we need to most effectively deal with the times in which we live, because the times are always different. But the issue of racism has remained consistent throughout the ages. So now I think pastors such as myself are challenged to say, rather to answer the question, so how are we going to respond now? What's the best response and the way to do it? And I think we need to obviously speak truth to power. We need to be prophetic in that sense. But I think also we need to do a lot more planning on the backside as to what are we going to actually do to help people make some changes while we're fighting those forces that are seeking to destroy our communities.
And Brother Renfro, might I add, I came from under a leader who was one of the strongest civil rights leaders in Beaumont, Reverend G.W. Daniels. And he fought against injustices for his entire lifetime. And with that being said, I grew up with the thought of social justice being a part of who I am. Went to a church, Pastor Mack probably knows more about it than I do, where Dr. King preached at in 1967 on his last tour to Houston. And we have Sunday school in the same place where Thurgood Marshall and Dr. King met as they planned and prepared what would take place in the Houston and southern states area. I think that a couple of things. The pastors are here. I think the agenda needs to be clear. I don't think that it should be, and this is unfortunately, and I'm gonna get into some trouble here, but this is truth. Unfortunately, there doesn't need to be a self-motivated agenda. Um, I am willing, and I'm probably one of the youngest on the front lines here in our city, but I'm always willing to say to Jimmy Dixon or, of course, to Pastor Lawson, who will still lead from his wheelchair, I'm always willing to submit and to say, you guys have been doing this. You let me know what I can do to help catapult the plan. And I think working together and not having a self-motivated agenda and somebody being willing to follow is what helps all of the pastors to hone their craft. Everybody is not the speaker who's going to stand and rally the troops at a protest, but he may be able to rally the troops for voter registration
Right.
or some other type of thing. And I think all of those pieces matter to the consortium of pastors who will catapult us to where we go on the next level.
I agree with you, Dr. Malone. I really do. And that's what and everybody's not that vocal leader. Some has like it's parts. Everybody has the different parts that they're, but it takes us to come together, like Dr. Mack says. It comes together
The
behind
scripture,
the scene in the background, and we need to organize and be strong with a plan. Don't you agree,
the
Dr.?
scripture says,
Yes.
yeah,
If you allow me to make an injection there, uh, our generation is somewhat different from the previous generation. Uh, Dr. Ransom Howard, uh, Dr. G.W. Daniels, Dr. Edward Brown here in Beaumont at the Antioch Church, Dr. McCarty at the Starlight Church, Reverend Goodall, who was at New First Sixth Street Church in Port Arthur, Reverend L.B. Wade at Eastern Star Baptist Church, Reverend Rufus Collins at the East Mount Olive Baptist Church in Port Arthur. They were unique Black leaders. In that generation, there were adults who were fearful because they had gone through the Jim Crow era. They knew what needed to be done, but they had fear. And because we had voices that stood in the forefront and started crying out, those preachers during that era or that time had younger people who rose up because they believed in that leadership. The problem that we're having today, and I don't discount the young people's movement, but our young people today, and I appreciate those that are active, but they never had to drink from a colored water fountain. They never were called the N-word openly by a white person. And so the struggles that we went through to get our people where we are today, because they did not struggle with us, they don't view the same way we view. And so now we have to work to get the younger generation to learn. In the book of Deuteronomy, it talks about how Israel was to teach their children. Many of us in our generation have eliminated that part of teaching to our young people. Many of our young people don't know Black history. They know the history that they've been taught in the schools. And so they don't know the struggle. Now, when something happens to one of our people, as it did with George Floyd, and that's on the national scene, that is what ignited the Black people to rise up. And then there were people who had relationships with blacks. There were white people who have felt in this generation that blacks are not 3/5 of a person, that we are whole. And so that has caused them to rise. But our challenge today, after the rallies, what do we do?
Where do we go?
And I'm afraid lately it hasn't been going anywhere. You know, we don't see it on CNN, we don't see it on NBC, we don't see it. They'll mention it, but it does not have that same fire and fervor that we had a few weeks ago. See, we are good at reacting, but we need to take the initiative. We know what's wrong, but we need to take the initiative to stand up and start declaring what needs to be done. And I'm afraid that if the black church, if the black pastor does not speak out, the black people are in trouble. Because every movement, as you stated earlier, started in the church. Every movement.
Every movement.
When Rabbit Cohen was killed back in the 70s, that movement in Port Arthur started in the church. And so it's going to call for black pastors to get up and start speaking. And I might want to say this, Pastor Dr. Grant, they might get mad at me. I might start some trouble, but I ain't bought. I can speak. I can say where the cow was chewing on their cabbage. I'm not afraid to speak my mind. I'm not afraid to address power with truth.
Well, Pastor Aaron, you're on the right show, because this podcast, Knowledge is Power, is about truth. It's about facts. This is what we're lacking in our community. Facts, truth, and education, by educating our communities. And I thank you guys, thank you, pastors, for being here with me today. And you're not afraid to speak out. And this is what we want, to speak out. We want leaders that's going to speak out and not be afraid to speak. And no, because I'm going to be a drum major to this whole program platform, and that means I'm going to speak out. I don't care. I always say I would eat a bowl of water with a fork before I think of anybody not speaking to me again. But I'm going to speak to facts and truth, and this is something I want done. Now, I might be going a little bit off script right here, but on Tuesday I had the class of 2020 graduates from high school, and those young people expressed some things to me about what's going on in their school district, in their schools, that really just knocked me off my feet, because I did not know. And I'm coming back from what you were saying, Pastor Reynolds, is that they don't know Black history. They get 1 week of Black history in school, and that's it. And they don't even know their history, their rich history. And that is a setback, I would say.
A major setback.
Major setback in our generation, that next generation. And I don't know what it's going to take to get that initiated, but we need to step in, pastors, and see what we can do to see if we can get Black history as a curriculum. Did I say it right? Curriculum in the schools. And that is something that I would like to have and get done. Now, Pastor Mack, I'm gonna come back to you right now, and I'm still off script right now. And one of the things I want to ask you is, where we've already marched, we protest, we've done everything we're supposed to do. They're still knocking down statues. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Can you help us?
Well, again, I think we have to have a strategy, and it needs to be a comprehensive strategy. Various people have talked about it around the country and in various areas, but I don't think that we've really made it plain enough to enough people so that we can work together. Like Dr. Malone was saying, many of us are willing to work with people who have special leadership abilities and some great strategies and ideas. Some of us feel like we have some ourselves in addition to that, but we need to have a strategy that can really be written down so it can be articulated and shared with people. And so sometimes the statement has been made, we don't seem to be able to get on the same page. And one person raised the issue when that came up. He said, show me the page. And I think that that's part of our problem. We don't have a page that says what we are trying to do. I don't know that we have a clear vision, a clear picture of what things would look like if we got everything we wanted. If we went to power and power said, okay, what do y'all want? What do y'all want? We'll give you whatever we want. Do we know exactly what it is that that we want? And when you look, I like the way your program is set up and dealing with the various areas. We need to know what we want politically. We need to know what the objectives are educationally. We need to make sure we have financial training in place. All of those are things that we can do for ourselves. And if others choose not to help us on that, at least we can have a strategy or a plan. I remember some years ago when Dr. Jerry Falwell was alive, he was saying that what they were going to do was start a law school with their university. They were going to train their young people to take over. They were going to flood the Supreme Court. They were going to flood Congress with people who had their mindsets. They did that. That's what we're looking at right now. They did that. I don't know if we're very clear on what our plan is. I think with local congregations, many of us have plans. We're doing, I don't think we ought to negate the fact that the Black church is still doing a lot of great things. You know, we're still pushing education for our children. We're still trying to help families. We're still trying to feed the poor. And most importantly, we're trying to make sure that people know who God is and how to have a right relationship with him. But I think on a larger scale, to work together as a community, I don't think we have the agenda clearly enough defined so that we can all, or not all, but many of us join in together. Let me also say, and then I'll let someone else talk, pastoring in the age of integration, I believe also is different from pastoring in the age of segregation. There was a time when we all had to be together because there was nowhere else we could go. Now we have been diluted quite a bit, and some people don't even really feel attached to the Black church, Black community in a lot of ways, because they feel that they have other advantages that somehow that's no longer necessary. I think the times we're living in are going to make some people rethink that. But it is different for me to pastor a church than it was when my dad was pastoring, because the times are different. And so the scripture says the men of Issachar understood the times and knew what to do. And I think that that's our challenge. The times we're living in, what does it call for? It will never be quite like it has been, but we need to know, understand the times, and then we need to know what to do. And then we need to make that very plain to the people who we seek to lead, what it is to do, and how, a practical way, how to implement the visions that we have.
Dr. Malone, you'd like to chime in on that?
You know, Dr. Mack really said it all. He really did. He summed up what we should be about. He summed up the fact that we do need a strategic plan. We need an agenda that we can all set our minds on. Let me also say another place that it is incumbent upon us to go from here is to the voting booth. That's not just national election. That is on everything, because I'm sure both Dr. Reynolds and Dr. Mack have had to deal with members who've been unjustly treated by the justice system and had to help people. And I think that understanding that even on the local level, our judges, our DAs, all of that has something to do with where we stand as Black folks. And if they don't hear anything, if white America does not hear, white supremacist America does not hear anything, they will have to hear our power to vote and our power of economics. The unfortunate problem is, if one comes up and says that this individual is, and I don't mind saying it, I'm on Joe Biden's leadership council over the clergy for the state of Texas. If we hear and we are decided not to support Brother Trump, and we hear that there is a business that has supported him, then we need to make a fist punch, an economic blow to that company and say, we will not be in support of your company if your company cannot support the agenda that helps the least, the last, and the left out. I still see Black folk going to Chick-fil-A. I mean, you know, that's just things that we still do and that we're not willing to give up when it comes to the fight. And I think that's what Dr. Mack was saying. Where is the page? Where is the paper? What are we doing? If we're just spinning our wheels and everybody's just doing what we want to do, we're in trouble.
I agree with you, Dr. Malone. We
Make an injection like that.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I concur with Dr. Malone about the voting.
I do too.
Our problem is that we don't recognize or realize the power that we have.
Yes.
In Beaumont, we have the majority.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
In Port Arthur, we have the majority.
Mhm.
And I look at police brutality and things of that nature. That's not President Trump's fault. That's our fault. Because the one who hires that police chief, they're the ones that we voted for locally.
Mhm.
Beaumont is city manager. Guess who hired the city manager? The city council does.
Mhm.
Guess who hired the police chief?
Mhm.
The city manager does.
Mhm.
And so we have to hold those that we have elected, that we have put in office, accountable to us. There's no accountability. When I see police brutality, and I've intervened several times, when I've seen wrong being done by the police, all the policemen are not bad.
Right.
But the problem is the ones that are good won't say anything.
Mhm.
So that makes them, to me, just as bad as the ones who are doing the wrong thing. Now, if we can't change our voting pattern, if we can't go to the polls and vote, it's not going to really matter who's in the White House. Because Trump, he's president of the United States, but he does not affect us locally. It's our local government, our school board, same way. We had a challenge several months ago about a name on a football stadium. Now, they didn't want the name of Carol Butch Thomas on the stadium. They couldn't do it by way of voting, so they got TEA to come in and take over our district. And then they changed the name of the stadium. Now, we were upset, we were angry, we rallied for 2 days. But then after that, we died out. Nothing is said. Recognize we have the power right now. The makeup of the Beaumont School Board, majority is black. But it's sad to say, in essence, we have little to no representation.
Wow.
They're following the agendas that others have set for them. That tells me we in trouble. We had the majority on the city council. Alderman Samuels, who has served a long time, he makes the statement very clear. He needs 4 votes on the city council to get anything done. When one of our city council ladies passed, she was not replaced with another black. We lost that seat. And right now, we only have, to my county, 2 blacks on the city council. Now that's an indictment on us, and we are the majority in Beaumont.
That's correct.
We should not have to wait to win a district. We should not have to wait to win a ward. We should be able to control the at-large seats. But because we don't vote, and again, I don't want to be pointing the finger, but it goes back to the black preacher, the black pastor. They have intimidated us to where we are afraid to speak from the pulpit. Now, the average white church is a 501c4. Nobody knows that. That's why they can get up and say what they want to say, because the 501c4 allows them to speak their opinion, to endorse their candidates. Most black churches are 501c3s. And because you are 501c3, you can't get up and talk politics on behalf of your church. But if you don't go to the civil liberties and get training, they will keep you muzzled and make you feel that you're powerless. Now, because I did go to the training, I found out my church cannot endorse a candidate, but I can.
That is correct.
I can call a candidate's name in the pulpit, in the parking lot, or anywhere else, because that's Reynolds speaking.
Right.
But so many of our pastors are afraid to say something because they think that their 501c3 is standing in jeopardy. So we need to recognize the voting power that we have. We have enough black churches in Beaumont. If whoever we want to serve in any capacity of the city government, we have the capacity to get that person elected.
So why haven't we gotten that person elected?
Because nobody wants to come out of the house. I never shall forget. It was 2000 or 2001. Both Pastor Reynolds and Pastor Mack probably remember. I was a youngster, fresh out of college, running for city council for the at-large seat against your now mayor, and Andrew Coconuts. And at that time, the population of Beaumont was 46% black. Evelyn Lloyd was running, also David Moore. And I shall never forget, the percentage of voter turnout was so low. Community overall, I knew what I was doing. Running for the at-large seat would be very difficult against two names that had been there. But the current mayor, Becky Ames, she got really afraid that I might slip up there and win. But the problem was our people are not moved to vote. They're not compelled to vote. It's not important to them to vote. And I think that's the only thing really that the church can do. We preach Jesus Christ. We also have to preach accountability and stewardship. Pastor Mack came to our church for many years and talked about stewardship and the fact that we are not, the fact that we are not owners, but we are managers. And in everything that we do, and we're just managing what God has given us, and that is a part of our stewardship, our ability to vote.
Well, we had an election a year ago, and we've had some of the best potential of candidates running, including myself. And one of the things that I've learned, and it was a very expensive learning, is that we divided the votes for too many people in one race.
Mm-hmm.
And it cost me thousands and thousands of dollars, and so I can live with it because it was an expense that I learned from. It taught me about elections and politics, but it didn't make sense that we are not placing the right candidates in the right positions for the right race. And we must unite and come together. We have to get groups together. We've got to get the alliance together. Whatever happened to the ministerial alliance? We've got to come together on one accord, and we got to take one seat at a time. I would think, and that's my thinking. And the way we got to do that is we've got to organize. We've got to have a plan. the how we're going to seat. I'm not talking about your best friend. I'm talking about someone that's qualified for that seat or those seats, because it all starts right here locally. Not just, wait a minute, we concerned about the president. That's not going to be, hey, we don't know who's going to be the president, but we've got the Senate, the Congress, the judge, the prosecutors, and most importantly, it's the locals. This is who runs this area, the locals. And if we don't get the locals in, we fight the battle. We fight the battle with a toothpick.
Allow me to make an injection. In the local politics, if you speak truth to power, they make personal attacks. And the challenge that I have with that is that we, as a black people, we ought to know those tactics by now.
Oh, yeah.
And instead of putting them down, putting them in check with that rhetoric, many of us join in with it.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, when they changed the name of our football stadium, and there were rumors that I was going to run for mayor of Beaumont. And because I spoke truth to power, there were blacks that were attacking my character because I was speaking to issues that concern the black community. A divided house is not going to stand. We're talking about doing a boycott in a few days, maybe 2 days now. That's a band-aid. That's not a solution. That's not even making a statement as to the economic power that blacks have. What good is it going to really do for us to boycott certain businesses for 1 day? Now, when I prayed about that, I came up with the idea that if you have a husband that's living an adulterous life, and he says, I'm not going to commit adultery on 1 day. For 1 day, I'm going to be true to you. For 1 day, I'm going to do what I need to do as a husband. And then on the next day, go back to his adulterous lifestyle. What has he accomplished? And that's what we're doing right now. We don't have black businesses. I remember Papa Do's, the NAACP had a convention here in Beaumont several years ago. And Papa Do's refused to just buy an ad in the souvenir book. And the NAACP president says they would not even buy $100 ad to support our convention. And when you go in Papa Do's, 65 to 75% of their customers are black.
That's right.
So he says to everyone that had come to that convention here in Beaumont, he says, do not go to Papa Do's and eat. What do you think happened?
They showed out. They went there and flooded the place.
Gave them an economic boost.
And again,
Thousands of dollars went into Papa Do's pocketbook because blacks supported it when you know that they're not supporting blacks. But now the challenge to that, though, we don't have the nice black restaurants that can give us the ambience that we desire, so we cannot go to those places like that. And then when you do have someone with the vision to reach out and try and make that happen, we don't support it.
That's right.
And we'll say the prices are high. They got to be high. If not, they're going to go under the first 3 months.
I crossed my mind many times. I've talked about it many times. Is that we go to these nail shop, wig stores, liquor stores, gambling shops. We do business with their insurance companies, and we visit their corner stores all the time, and that's a daily routine for a lot of us. And we cannot get them to donate $50 for an ad for our organization or our church or our children, and we steady feeding them our business.
Yes.
And that is something that we've got to stop, or we must put them on a list and say, okay, we're not going to do business with this this particular business.
Let
And
me make another
Brother Rick,
injection.
oh,
Let me make another injection.
I,
When I came to Beaumont 23 years ago, McGinnis on 11th Street was the supplier for the lightings in almost every church in Beaumont, every black church. I recall my first church anniversary here in Beaumont. And because Borden Chapel bought all their lights from them, I went and asked them, would you consider getting an ad in our church anniversary souvenir book? And this lady tells me, and she's white, I ain't afraid to say it, she's white. She tells me they don't take out ads in church events. Another one of the churches here in the city, white church, had an event and they took out an ad in that book. I'm just crazy enough to go back to McGinnis with that souvenir booklet and say, ma'am, you told me that y'all did not do this. Look at what you've done in this souvenir book. And she said that was their choice to do what they want to do. And I told her that she will never get another dime from Borden Chapel. Williams Insurance Company was the same way. Borden Chapel paid tens of thousands of dollars for insurance from them for like 20 years. They would not take an ad. And I told the owner, I said, wait a minute. You're our insurance agent. And you're going to tell me after we spend tens of thousands of dollars with you that you can't take a $10 ad? You know what happened? I did not renew that policy with Williams Insurance.
Pastor Matt, like you want to add something there?
Well, and I mean, this is your show, Brother Renfro, and I'm glad you're doing. I do think we need more of these kinds of things where there are opportunities for discussion and so forth. But just for the three of you all who have much longer tenures in Beaumont than I do, even though I've been here 26 years now, do either of you know the comprehensive plan that Black America in Beaumont, Texas has? Can either one of you all articulate what we're trying to do? I mean, I know we have a lot of different discussions, but I'm saying, I think even with the four of us who are here in dialogue now, none of us can refer to, no, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is how we're trying to work together. If somebody new comes to the city and say, okay, what's the plan? What are you all trying to do? I'm trying to help. I'm not sure any of us, even that's on here today, could clearly articulate, this is the community plan for the Black American community. Now, when I say the Black American community, I'm not against, I don't think we ought to just say, hey, we're against white people, because I'm not against white people. I'm against anybody who's standing in the way of us trying to do what's in the best interest of humanity, and particularly Black humanity. So for white people who are saying, listen, we're for right, and we want to do the right thing, want to help you, I think we ought to fully embrace that. For people who are saying, listen, I'm going to do things that are going to hurt your family, going to hurt your children, going to hurt the economy in the communities that you, for the most part, operate, I think we need to be against that. But as opposed to spending all of my energy on what I'm against and who I'm going to be fighting against, I want to spend more time dealing with what I'm for. And to do that, I need to have a clear agenda. And most of us as pastors, we do it as relates to building programs and scholarship programs. We know what we are trying to do, and we tell everybody, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to collect money, build a building. We're going to get an architect. We're going to structure it. This is what it's going to look like. Here's the vision. And people rally behind that and say, oh, here's the vision. They can tell when it's built because they had some blueprint to look at to say, this is what we're trying to build. I don't know that we have that as a community. If we were successful, how would we know it? I mean, are we clear enough on what we're trying to achieve that we will know it when we get it? So like with the politics and voting registration, like James Payne, Reverend James Payne, Attorney James Payne, he has a good idea for churches, formulating a way to try to get more people involved in voting. But again, we need to have some very clear things that we can articulate to the membership where there is no vision. The people are indeed going to perish in a backup. Write the vision, make it plain. So write it on tablets so those who read it can run with it. And so I don't know if we would go to our congregational members and to the community and say, you all go run with it. And then they would say, well, we're not sure what we're running with. The vision has not been written. It has not been made plain. We don't know what we're trying to do. We're scattered. Everybody's trying to do something different. We're not going to get everybody together, I do not believe. But I do think we can get a significant group of people together who can formulate something that the majority can agree upon. This will be good for Beaumont, Texas, and this will be good for the African American community in Beaumont, Texas, and for non-African Americans who want to support something that's good and right, to show them this is what we are trying to do. These are the things that are standing in our way. That's why we are fighting that. That's why this is the person who holds a political position who is hurting our community. We are against that. But I think we need to know what our plan is, and I'm just not sure we know what it is.
Allow me to make an injection there.
Okay.
The People's Political Action Committee, PPAC. The purpose for PPAC is to bring the Black pastors together.
Okay.
To unify.
Okay.
To get people elected in office that will that have our values, that can help us or the Black community reach its potential. A classic demonstration of Black pastors coming together was the 2018 election. Because we affected as a group of pastors, we had pastors in Beaumont and Port Arthur that had come together. We organized. We brought our church vans. We had a central location where people can call that wanted to get transportation to the polls so they can vote. We had organized grassroots efforts where we would go into various communities and have, we wouldn't call them rallies because we never had really that many people, but I just believe that every one of us have what I would call a sphere of influence. And if each person just would use that sphere of influence, and I believe that every one of us have a sphere of at least 10 people. And if each one of us would influence 10 people just to go to the polls to vote, and to not just vote for a candidate, but put candidates in office that will embrace our values.
Well,
So,
Pastor,
go ahead, Pastor.
Well, Pastor, let me interrupt you on that, and let me commend you first of all for doing that. Let me challenge maybe you, Brother Renfro. What would be a great idea then is maybe like for you, and I think maybe there are a couple of other pastoral groups possibly who may be doing something similar. I'm not sure. If they are, it would be great maybe if Brother Renfro could have all of you all on one program like this. And if they are not, that you would be on it, and that we would try to reach out to pastors and say, you all, this is something, at least look at it. If you got a problem with it, let Dr. Reynolds know that doesn't, we don't agree with that. We can't support that. If we can, let's come together. I'm sure you already have it in some written form so that it can become a thing where a group of pastors, and I'm not saying people have to give up. I know they have other groups. I'm not saying they have to give up what they are doing, but to say, you all, let's come together. Let's write down what everybody is doing. This will be one good example. Let's write down what everybody is doing from a pastoral standpoint. Pastors, look at it. If you can't support all of it, look at what you can support. And then those of you who are leading, like you have the group you're leading, and maybe if some of the other pastors have another group that they are leading, for you all to come together, do something maybe like this, where all the other pastors say, listen, all of us are trying to accomplish something that's similar. Let's get together and do it. Then I'm saying we now have a strategy that is clear to all of us, and even a new pastor coming in town. Well, man, what are you all doing from a political standpoint? This is what we are trying to do. How will we know if it's successful? It's written down. We're saying this is what we're trying to do. We can gauge our success by how many of us work together. The thing you were talking about, 501c4 as opposed to 501c3, people can have those kind of questions. I'm saying, to me, that would be a good starting point to say, let's come up with an agenda. And so the things that you're talking about now, let's broaden that. And again, for the opposition that you might have against, oh, well, that's just Reynolds' program, so we're not going to be a part of that. Well, tell us what yours is. And then let's come together and see. We don't have to merge them, but we can certainly be supportive and say, you know, we're doing this. And I would be excited about seeing more about that in some written format, so we could kind of, even if it's informally, adopt that this is our agenda for this particular area. This is our page. And let's see how many of us can come together on the same page. So I commend you for that, and I would love to see us be able to embrace something like that.
I agree too, and I'm gonna tell you right now, that's a done deal. You got this show anytime you want it. I'll move a show back, whatever. This is what this podcast is for again, truth, the facts. We got to use this as an empowerment. Our voice.
Well, I commend you for it. I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sir.
And I'm going to make another injection.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a result of what happened in 2018, everyone that runs for political office in Beaumont now comes to PPAC.
I'm sure.
There was a time when any candidate that ran for office in Beaumont, they went by Sunlight Baptist Church to see the Baptist Ministers Union.
Let me
and imagine if PPAC and any other groups got together. And so if you all are together, there's nowhere else to go but to the group. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. That if there's a panel, the group you are leading, and if some others say, listen, we want our group, we don't want to join your group, but we will work in cooperation. Okay, well, let's bring the groups together for important issues like that. But let's maybe meet ahead of time. Sometime when we're going to have 5 candidates running for the same spot, it might be good if we could convince them, let us meet with you all first, and let's kind of talk about that. If we have 5 candidates running for the same spot, and then somebody who we maybe are not in agreement with running, then we may be defeating ourselves even before the election takes place. Let's discuss whether or not there's a way. That's what I'm talking about more. It's having a strategy, a plan. And that's challenging to do, because sometimes it's challenging for our egos, as Dr. Malone was saying earlier, to come together like that. But I would love to see it. And I think if we ever strategize like that, a sleeping giant will have been awakened.
I can agree with the Pastor Mack, and again, I'm going to co-sign with you on that one. And not, no offense, Dr. Reynolds, but the PPAC, I think you're doing a awesome job in putting it together, but I think it needs to be a little bit more aggressive, more structured, because I've got a lot of calls and emails and texts on potential candidates and others who have run, and the elected officials that felt like you guys was overwhelmed on the process. And I'm one too. You know, I'm one that was in that election as well. And what Pastor Mack has suggested, I think, would be a good ideal to see if we can come together. If how many alliances there is? 4, 5, 6 alliances?
Well, allow me to say this. PPAC is not just one denominational effort.
Right.
It's a cross section. We have the Ministerial Brotherhood Alliance, the Baptist Ministers Union of Beaumont. As a matter of fact, PPAC is the political action committee from the Baptist Ministers Union.
And see, I wasn't aware of that. I knew about PPAC, and I have not attended a meeting, I don't think. But out of this discussion, I certainly want to find out more about it. So, Dr. Reynolds, I would, I guess, encourage you then maybe I know you've already been reaching out to all of us. but maybe to have some smaller group meetings, share more of what you're doing, and allow people maybe to come in and say, these are some concerns I have, and let it develop more fully. I know, you are our moderator. I know your organizational abilities and sense of vision and the like. So I would encourage you to pull some more of us together through individual small group conversations like this. Let us know, what's already in place, and give us an opportunity to express any concerns that we might have. And again, let's at least have this one group. We're saying, what are the Black pastors doing? You have a group of them that are already working together. Let's get together with you and, formulate it, refine it, strategize even more than what has already happened, and maybe even be ready for this next election, and become a power block that has to be reckoned with politically.
See, like right now, we have the November election coming up, and we have Republican candidates who have no one running against them.
Right.
Wow.
Every seat needs to be challenged.
Every seat needs to be challenged.
Our issue is that we wait until 2 to 3 months before an election to try and run a candidate.
I know.
I think we need to groom a person into the position that we need them to be.
And I think discussions like that among the different groups that you're talking about, if we can expand it, I think we can have a level of unity there that goes to what we're all talking about. I think that vision being expanded, and then us figuring out how do we actually implement it on a wider scale than what you've already done, along with others who are working with you. I think that's an exciting adventure that we can all go on together.
Pastor Mack,
let me add.
Go ahead, Dr.
Let me add. Don't throw these young folks away.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, their minds may not have comprehended all of the history, but they have a fire in them that is willing to step out, where some of our older generation have been afraid, have coalesced and walked with the enemy for their own personal good.
The young people are leading the charge now. They are leading the charge. I agree.
You got a different type of group now.
Yeah, it is.
And they're ready, they're fired up, and some of them need to line up and take these positions. I just think about Port Arthur, for example. You've got, I think, one who leads the school board. Is that DELBERT? I think, right? And then you've got...
He's the mayor of
Mayor.
Yes, he's the mayor.
The mayor.
No, I'm talking about I thought the son.
The son is on the school board, yes.
Yes. Son is on the school board. You've got
Kalen,
NAACP, Chris Bates, your constable. And so I think that all of these guys have something that we need not overlook and that they can offer. And there is some fire that gets behind them that I think is worth looking at.
I agree.
What we're doing in Houston is, as I serve as moderator, there are the other moderators of the other district associations and bishops, as I know Moderator Reynolds works well with one of the bishops out of Houston as well. But all of these bishops, we're trying to pull everybody together, even our Muslim brothers and sisters. We don't agree on Jesus, but we agree on advancement of the agenda of Black America. And I think that we have to find the common thread and remove our egos, and let's walk together as best we can for the advancement of all people. We are currently putting together a Zoom where all of us might be in a format we can all contribute and talk about how we advance Black Houston forward.
And I would encourage us to document before we implement. Let's write it down so we all know where we're going, so we can share it. So let's document it before we implement it, so we can make sure that the implementation, is according to plan.
Yeah.
Document before we implement. I'm going to write that down, Dr. Mack.
Well, our church staff and I, we're supposed to be doing it. That's the plan. Document it before we implement it. And that way, if you get it right, you'll know what you did to get it right. If you don't document it, then you might get it right, but you can't remember what you did to achieve it.
Well, Pastor Mack and Dr. Reynolds, I think we can come together and do this. I think it'll be a start.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we got this podcast that we can just put it out there, the plan,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's attention, so
Mm-hmm.
that news can get out right. And
Mm-hmm.
no rumors.
Right.
It'll be the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
And again, before we go tonight, and I'm gonna get a last word from each one of you all, is that we must go and vote. That's early voting going on right now. It's going on until the 10th of July. Out, and this is local primaries. We must go out and vote. And remember, we have Senator Ross West is in a Senate runoff, and early voting starts. Election is on July the 14th. So early voting is until July 10th. So let's do that. Also, remember to I think the registration is over for voting for this primary, but we're also going to start registering for the general election, and that is in November. And we must remember also we've got till October the 10th. I'm sorry, October the 14th or 15th to do our 2020 census, and I'm going to have someone on to just kind of explain to us why we need those 2020 census completed and done. And with that, with last word, Dr. Reynolds, I'm gonna let you go first. I'm going to let Dr. Malone and Pastor Mack, I'll let you close us out.
I want to encourage everyone to go to the polls and vote. We have the runoff for our Justice of the Peace, Precinct 1, Place 1. PPAC has endorsed Naomi Doyle. We have endorsed Royce West. I'm thankful for the efforts of our community with Senator West. It was Jefferson County that actually catapulted him into the runoff because his name was not known in our area. And because of the efforts of the pastors, we have like 60 pastors with PPAC that got together. We didn't get the voter turnout that I thought we could have gotten, but it's because of their efforts his name became known, and we can't afford to not participate in this runoff election. And so I want to encourage everybody to come on out and embrace Senator Royce West so he can win. Now, we're supporting Naomi. Naomi is a young lady. We're trying to get young people involved in our politics here in Beaumont. I have nothing against the old, but I've reached that 3 score. And that means that I likely have more years behind me than I have in front of me. And I want to make sure that we have our young people, that we can stand by them, educate them, help them to win, help them to be positive, productive citizens in our community. And if we do that, when we leave off the scene, our communities will be in good hands. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. With that last closing. And also I'd like to remind everybody that race and the in the Justice of the Peace, that's 2 minorities running, correct?
2 minorities.
What is the other gentleman named? Milburn.
We hated it.
Right.
Just one.
So we got 2. We're gonna get 1. So we want to make sure we get out and vote. And Dr. Malone.
Thank you again, Tony, for having me. It's been my pleasure to share with these 2 sage leaders of our time, and I am thankful to have been able to be on. Let me say that faith, education, economics, those are the things that we must focus on as a community. First of all, understanding that we can do nothing without God.
That's right.
It is impossible for us to move unless he gives us specific orders. Economics that we learn to buy, and I know, let me clarify, because I know my video as I was out in Emancipation Park at the rally went viral. I did not say buy your weed from your own people. I said buy your weave from your own people. Let me clarify that. That has gone around the nation, and I needed to clarify that. Somebody said everybody was amen to you. I said that's not what I said. Let me clarify. But that we look at buying from our own businesses. James Payne used to have a program in Beaumont when I was there called the Buy 90 campaign, which was for 90 days you supported Black-owned businesses and saw the economic effect that it had on those businesses. And finally, education. There's a difference between schooling and education. A lot of people who are schooled and uneducated. We need to be educated. We need to be taught on how we move forward, how we proceed, what will be effective and efficient, not just what makes noise, but what creates movements. Finally, if you cannot change the masses, change the moments, and moments eventually will change masses. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malone. And I had to make a correction. That's the name of that candidate is running along in the Justice of Peace is George Millhouse Jr. And I'm so sorry. I've gotten so wrapped up into this deal here with everybody's talking and saying some very powerful things, and I just got brain dead for a minute. But we all have to vote, and we must vote, and we must vote big time, and especially the general election. We must vote as if our lives depends on it. Don't you agree, Pastor Fact? You can close us out with that.
I do agree that we definitely need to vote. I also, as a pastor, say my first commitment will always be to evangelism and discipleship. You know, that's the calling. My calling is the calling of the church. But I think that all of us must continuously wrestle with what are the social implications of the gospel. If I'm going to love my neighbor like I love myself, those are social implications that have to affect my voting. They have to affect all of my relationship. And again, if any white brothers and sisters are listening, I would challenge them. Their discipleship, and I know I've heard some of my white pastor colleagues say that we just need to focus on evangelism and discipleship. I agree with that, but there's no way you can be a disciple of Jesus Christ and not be concerned about your brothers and your sisters, not be concerned about justice and love, not be concerned about the poor. It is not possible to follow him closely and not be concerned about those things. So I do think we as pastors need to focus on building stronger churches. But as we build the stronger churches, I think the things that we're talking about today are the social implications that come out of our being followers of Jesus Christ. And I believe that voting says that we become stewards of that vote. God has given us the stewardship of the vote. And I think that we need to understand that we have an opportunity to in some way help be the salt of the earth, even through our stewardship of the vote. And we need to encourage our members to understand it is a right, but it is also something that is a privilege, but it's also something that's a stewardship. It's an obligation. Go to the poll and represent God. Go to the poll and represent the teachings of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Go to the poll and represent the Christian community and the Christian values. So we have an obligation to do so. And I think our congregations need to see that, not again, just as a social action step, but also as a stewardship. And I encourage them to vote. I've already voted. My wife has already voted. And I encourage every person to make sure that they vote.
Thank you, Pastor Mack, Dr. Malone, Pastor AIRON Reynolds. Thank you guys for joining me today. And also I'd like to invite you all back again once we get it all. We got to start and putting it kind of together again, I guess. But I'm really serious and very interested in starting and combining and put our heads together. You know, it takes, like you said earlier in the show, let's leave our egos behind at the door and let's come together and unite and let's work on our local politicians and politics and let's put our heads together and come together. Once we do that, we're unstoppable. And again, we're 52% majority here in this city. And we do not reflect it downtown at City Hall. And we've got to get that back. We've got to get it. And we are going to get it. And it takes a plan and strategy. So with that, I'm saying thank you everyone for watching Knowledge is Power. Join me Tuesday when I will have all your young Black-owned business owners on 1 hour with us on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And with that said, thank you and God bless. My pastor, stay online here. We're going to end the show, and I want to speak with you backstage for a minute. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.